Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke.
Glory to you, O Lord.
The apostles said to the Lord, "Increase our faith." The Lord replied, "If you have faith the size of a mustard seed, you would say to this mulberry tree, 'Be uprooted and planted into the sea,' and it would obey you. Who among you would say to your servant who has just come in from plowing or tending sheep in the field, 'Come here immediately and take your place at table'? Would they not rather say, 'Prepare me something to eat'? Put on your apron and wait on me while I eat and drink. You may eat and drink when I am finished." And they will be grateful to that servant because they did what was commanded. So should it be with you. When you have done all you have been commanded, say, "We are unprofitable servants. We have done what we were obliged to do." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
I am a person of faith. We are people of faith. We are a community of faith. That's what joins us together, because we believe. Well, what does it mean to say that we are a believing community? I believe a lot of things that aren't important and things that are truly important. I believe when I go into a room and I flip the light switch that the light is going to go on. I'm not really sure how it works, but usually it happens. I believe when I'm driving in traffic, when I stop, that the person behind me is going to stop. And when I go into In-N-Out and order a double and I say I don't want any sauce, I believe that they're not going to put any sauce on my hamburger. I believe that when we come together to celebrate Mass at 5 o'clock in the evening on a Saturday, that people are going to show up, that there's going to be ministers, that there's going to be someone to sing the songs, there'll be lectors, there'll be Eucharistic ministers, there'll be ushers. I believe that people will be here so that we can celebrate together. I believe in God. I believe that God's promise to me is true, His promise of eternal life. I believe that God will forgive me my sins, and 70 times, 7 times. Such is the mercy and the love of God for each and every one of us. I believe. Belief is always about a relationship. Something as simple as driving in the traffic. I believe that the other person's going to obey the traffic laws, and they believe that I'm going to obey them as well. It's nice driving here in Los Angeles that you never see people getting angry when they're driving. Everyone's always calm and cool and collected, And there's never any traffic problems, is there? But the thing is, in order to drive, we need to have that faith and confidence in people in the other cars that we don't even know. The same thing coming together to celebrate the Eucharist. Especially for myself, just because I've only been here a little bit longer than a month. I didn't know who would show up at 5 o'clock on a Saturday evening. I didn't know if Dr. Jim knew how to play the piano or not. And in the same way with myself, people didn't know who I was. You believed me when I said that I was Father Patrick and I was one of the new Redemptorists who was appointed here to be your pastor. No one asked for any letter from the provincial or the letter of appointment accepting me from Archbishop Gomez. We're a people of faith. And faith means that we have a relationship with one another. Think about important relationships in your life. Especially those of you who share the sacrament of marriage. And think of how it is that your relationship has grown. When you first married and how you were so much in love. And 10, 15, 25, 50 years later, see how your relationship has grown. And if it hasn't grown, there's something lacking in that relationship. You know, faith, as Jesus says in the gospel for today, faith is like the size of a mustard seed, something that's a mere speck, something that is not even hardly able to be seen. And what Jesus is saying to us is it doesn't matter how great our faith is, it doesn't matter how much faith that we have. The important thing is that we are men and women of faith. And what happens when we are men and women of faith is that gift of faith is something that grows. It's something that deepens. It's something that continues to be a blessing to other people. You know, in the gospel for today, Jesus says if you had faith, you could say to a mulberry tree, be uprooted and planted into the sea. If we had faith, we would be people who would work in the fields. We would be people who serve at table. What Jesus is talking about is that if we have faith, we will do things. And we will do wonderful and important things. You know, in the similar gospel from Matthew, it talks about moving mountains. Because we are men and women of faith, we move things that are greater than mountains. We are able to move men and women's hearts. And our hearts are moved as well because we have entered into a relationship with God, with a God who loves us. And the great thing about this relationship that we enter into with God is that God never fails us. You know, when you reflect upon your relationship with other people, in all honesty, we have to say that at times we have failed. And as people of faith, we've forgiven and we've been forgiven as well. That it's been a both and. And the great thing about that gift of forgiveness is I'd be willing to bet for those of us who have been able to forgive and move on, our love and our relationship and our faith in that other person is even deeper. It is even stronger. You know, the last line of the gospel for today doesn't sound very nice. That at the end we should say, we are unfaithful servants and we've only done what it is that is expected of us. And what Jesus is saying to us is, don't expect that we're going to get some kind of special reward because of our faith. Because the truth of the matter is, faith in itself is its reward. Because we believe in God, we don't need any special rewards. Our reward is our faith in Jesus and Jesus' faith in us as well. And you know, and the truth of the matter is, the gospel in the original Hebrew, it's even more harsh. What Jesus says is not servants, but he says slaves. You are slaves. And the great thing about being a slave is means that we are owned by our God, that we belong to God, that we are his, and he claims us as his own.